Pat, I see that you have a number of pieces of equipment here for printmaking, one of which is silkscreen. Can you tell us how you came by them and basically what they're used for?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question because in the particular studio that I'm in right now, there is not adequate space to set up all the equipment that I have. And my focus has been the form of printmaking known as serigraphy or silkscreen. However, I have equipment for not only lithography, but etching. And the dream that I had when I acquired this equipment was that I would be able to make it available to the use of other artists. And this possible art center in Qualicum, this coming dream, is going to be a fulfillment of that. Perhaps people will be able to come and use these kinds of presses, rent time on them. And
so it'd be something of a kind of cooperative venture then to some degree in that various local artists would be coming in. Would they strictly be renting space strictly for printing, or would there be studio work going on as well, do you think?
Well, there's a possibility for studio work. I'm fairly flexible, but I would prefer mainly to make presses available. You see, printmakers are limited by the fact that they need to use this expensive, unwieldy equipment. And a lot of their process happens before they actually have to use the presses. They have preparation of plates or screens that can be done on other premises, and then the actual pressing can be done only where the presses are available. So that would be what the kind of shop that I would like to have, where people would come and rent press time.
You mentioned lithography, etching, and silkscreen. Are those the main areas that you'd be looking at, or are there other areas as well that you would incorporate?
No, that's pretty much what I have. As far as equipment goes, I have other processes that I like to work with children with that involve very inexpensive kinds of equipment, but that's pretty big handful. Just those three areas are fairly large.
Right. Now, that would be one area, I guess, that would be incorporated there with the large facilities. We've been there and looked at it, and the area that they're dedicating to printmaking is quite large, quite substantial. You'd be able to do expanded classes with children and adults, I suppose.
Yes, I really hope that that's going to be the case. For me, the experience of art has been very much wanting to share it and help others to a form of self-expression through it. I think children are especially interested in printmaking.
Right.
It's very exciting for them.
Now, your main interest, of course, is silk screening. Tell us a bit about that. How long have you been involved? Where did you get your training?
Well, I took my training at Michigan State University. I was interested in what I very snobbishly thought were fine arts, painting and sculpture. And printmaking was such a craft. I thought printmaking was a craft along with pottery. And I found that afterwards this was what really attracted me. I had the experience of doing some printmaking, and I've never really quit. It's just been the sort of journey for me. It keeps unfolding.
Tell us a little bit about how the process works generally. I noticed that you have a frame and that you have silk stretched across it.
Yeah, have a look at this, Chris. This is a silk screen, the actual frame, and the fabric on it used to be pure silk. Now it's often polyester because it's more durable. It's stretched very tightly, and to this silk or polyester is attached a stencil. Silkscreen is basically a stencil method of printing. Right.
And there are various methods, including photographic. You can use the photographic medium.
For making stencils. Yes, there certainly is. I have probably an option of maybe 6 different stenciling methods. The type that I use generally is the photographic stencil method, where you work from a positive and create a photographic image on a sensitive material.
Well, we're going to take a look at that process. You're going to be showing us a little bit of it, and we're going to take a look at some of your work. But I think talking about the Cultural Center now, just before we go, how do you think that this will work? You will be managing the place. Will it be like a business enterprise for you, do you think? Or will you be mainly just managing, making sure that the equipment is upgraded, you know, kept up, maintenance, that
Oh,
kind
I
of thing?
see. You mean within the print shop?
Right, when it comes...
Oh, I plan to be there working. That is my hope. I want to be there as a studio artist. It is a commercial venture in a certain sense, I guess, in the way that all art potentially is a commercial venture, but I'm looking at it hopefully that it will pay its bills, not really hoping to make a grand profit from it. I'm very intrigued by the way that it has come about, that the business community has taken an interest in promoting the arts in this area, and it's kind of it has the potential of a beautiful marriage in a way, because most artists tend to be not the greatest in the business aspect, and perhaps the business people are able to use our energy to create markets, so perhaps we can work together. That's something new, I think.
Do you think there are a number of people in the area who are just sort of waiting for this to happen, like people that are printmaking that may have done lithography before but just don't have access to the materials or to the press? You think it'll be well used?
Yes, I do. I think there are plenty of people out there that currently are working in Nanaimo or even in Vancouver at Malaspina Printmakers who will be able to have local access then.
Good. Well, let's take a look at some of the silk screening process here.
When I began working with this particular design, I put in different kinds of background colors and then printed over with this. Of course, behind you there are examples of what I did with that.
Now the ink that you put on the ink and the squeegee, you're pulling it across. What is the basic process here? I see you turning on the machine there.
This is the vacuum table, and it stabilizes the what they call a substrate, or the substance that you're printing on, so that it doesn't wiggle under there because it's going to make an uneven or unsharp line. And basically this is a stencil. It's been attached to this silk screen. Actually, this was a photographic emulsion. It was painted on the silk screen and then it was exposed in the darkroom to make a stencil. All the areas that don't receive ultraviolet light wash out.
I see. So they make a hole in the screen then?
Yeah, and then that provides a stencil. You can get quite fine detail through this photographic process. And then when you pull the squeegee across like this, it forces ink through that stencil in a really even, controlled way, hopefully, depending on your skill as a silk screener, and results in a print on the substrate. One thing I like about silk screen, sorry to interrupt, is that you can print on just about anything. You can print on curved surfaces, you can print on glass, you can print on fabric or paper or cardboard. And it's also alive as a commercial process. Still, there's a demand for it commercially, whereas a lot of forms of art printing have died as commercial processes, and therefore there just is not the same technology available.
I was thinking of different uses for silk screen and coffee cups and that kind of thing. A lot of times they're silk screen.
That's right.
Just using a different process to put it onto the cup.
That's right, yeah. Silk screen can be put on just about anything.
Now you have flooded the screen between. You put some ink over top of it. Why do you do that?
Well, that keeps it from drawing out, especially with your really bright lights. If for years I had read in books about flooding, and I just resisted it. I have a really stubborn streak, and sometimes I don't want to, just because someone else said to do it. So when I finally got around to it, I was very pleased with the results.
Like I said, we've seen the final color here, but when you're printing, you would be putting background colors on first.
That's
that
right, yes. And stopping out the areas where I don't want the background color to come in. You want to look at these behind you, then you'll see that the body of the bird, we want it to remain white, has had to be stopped out, and then the background color printed around it.
Right, so you printed on fabric as well. You've taken this basic motif and you have worked it on different surfaces.
With different kinds of ink, you can print on different substances. The inks that you use for textiles are quite a bit different from paper inks, and because if you wanted an extremely fine detail on a fabric, you just couldn't get away with a coarse screen.
When you're doing a series of prints on paper, for instance, is there any general rule in terms of how many? You're almost unlimited, I guess, as to the number that you can produce at one time. Are there any rules for that?
Well, it really depends on the quality of the stencil, because what generally limits the use of the stencil for many impressions is whether it's going to break down or not. These kinds of stencils are good for thousands of impressions.